Welcome, everyone. We're thrilled to have you. This is our third session of our Access and Equity Professional Learning Series. I'm Angie Schindelar, and I am now past president of ICTM. I would invite you to check us out at Iowa Math Teach and to follow us at iowamath.org. We have Dr. India White with us tonight. She has lots of wonderful accolades that you can read about here. She has been leading this series. And so, as I said, this is our third session for this evening. So we're really excited about the topic tonight. I know I am really excited to hear what she has to say. The email that I sent to everybody has the links from the previous two sessions, and then we will send you the link from this session tonight as well. All right, so just a little tidbit. India was able to join us for the conference this fall, so it was really fun to get to see her in person, and several people were really thrilled with her session. So looking forward to doing some more things with her at this fall's conference, but we'll give you a little bit more on that later. So you can see here that of the sessions, we've done the first two. So our third one tonight is building relationships. I don't like math and I don't like you. Boy, if I had $1 for every time a student said that to me, it's like, whoo, that one hit home. And then you can see that our last one will be in April. So again, we'll send you the link and a reminder of that as that one gets closer. So I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to India. So I'll stop sharing and you can take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Angie, and to all of you Iowa rock stars. I'm so thrilled to be here with everyone. Thank you. I'm going to start sharing, and I'm super excited about this presentation because it kind of hits home, and so I want to really go into this. I'm going to start the slideshow. We'll be going in and out of the slideshow because there'll be some interaction that we'll be making that will be slideshow slash different opportunities for you to use your cell phones if you're with me. If not, don't worry about it. Do it on your own time. So first things first, in this webinar, the objective is to discuss research about relationship building with students from various backgrounds. We'll discuss strategies for implementing effective practices for relationship building, and we'll understand theoretical concepts behind culturally responsive teaching. There's so much more, but I wanted to be mindful of your time. So with that said, Angie has told you a little bit about myself. I have been in the education space for 15 years. I was a math teacher, grades 6-12 at a Title I school, or Title I schools. I was promoted 2-time Teacher of the Year. Then I became an assistant principal, did that for grades 9-12 mainly, did some 6-12 there. Then I was a math coach at a turnaround school where we were able to go from having students performing at 27% proficiency to 77% proficiency. And then I got on board with Big Ideas Learning and National Geographic Learning as a national education consultant. And then, of course, as a co-author now with Big Ideas Learning, Cengage Learning, National Geographic Learning. And so I say all that because I just want to let you know that I'm in the trenches with you. I'm not speaking from, I guess, a background where I don't have the experience. Definitely have had so many different situations where I've had kids actually confide in me that, hey, miss, because I like you, I'm going to let you know that I'm going to bring a gun to school tomorrow. And, just because I like you and, you can help me kind of maneuver through the situation. And we were able to keep the campus safe and to keep the gun from coming on campus. So having extreme situations like that to then having, of course, your favorite teacher's pet type of student that, just will do anything for you, comes in early to help set up. And so I hope that at the end of this webinar series that you will find some key nuggets as to how you can relate to all students, no matter the background, no matter the situation. So some questions I want you to first think about rhetorically, and then of course you can put in the chat if you're here, are what are some successes that you are having with connecting with students? And then what are some areas of focus that you want to connect deeper with your students? So again, what are some successes that you are having? And then what are some areas of focus for you to connect deeper with your students? So take a moment, think about it, put it in the chat if you have a chance. I'm going to see if I can find the chat. let's spend a couple seconds on this. And so as you guys are thinking about those questions, I'll transition. So I want to now do an activity, and this is another thing you can either share out or you can put in the chat. Who was your most annoying student and why? So I want you to just take a moment and think about that student that just got on your nerves, the student that you're just like, oh my Lord, I can't do this. Like when the student walks in, you're like telling them to go, like you just don't even want them there. Like, what is it about that student's characteristics that makes them annoying, or someone that you struggle to have a positive and healthy relationship with? Go ahead and put some characteristics of a student. Don't reveal the identity. Just put some characteristics as we can talk through these things. And as you're doing that, I'll talk about what you guys said too about having some successful relationships. So Kristen said, success with greeting students at the door and following up with an interest or something they told me about. Excellent. And then and then after that, most Amanda said most students are verbally reporting that they're like math, they think it's fun. I have a challenging student that just can't seem to focus. So this is answering this question here. Or understand the importance. So they can't focus, can't understand the importance. Angie talks about success with helping students build confidence. Okay. Engaging and explaining, thinking and enjoying, laughing and having fun. This is great. So now let's go back and talk about what are some annoying characteristics about students. I can tell you for myself, I remembered when I was teaching, I had a student that would never come to class on time. And then when he did come to class, he didn't even care. He would just put his head down, and it was totally emotionally disconnected, and it did not bother at all. And I just could not seem to make ends meet with this child. And so as we grapple through all of these different examples, we're going to talk about some solutions and some things that we can do to kind of help us to bridge the gap with these learners. So first things first is I am here with why we need culturally responsive teaching. And the reason why is we're going to talk about the different umbrellas of effective teaching skills and strategies. And we have this one as one of them. So Edutopia revealed in the article, Relationship Building Through Culturally Responsive Classroom Management by Todd Finley, they said that African American students have a 31% likelihood of being suspended than white students. And the criminal justice policy expert said that. And they said, even though no evidence supports the notion that African American students behave more. So they're just being suspended more, but there's nothing that says that they're, behaving more. So then behavior is not necessarily tied to the suspensions, if that makes sense. It says minority youth receive fewer services and supports than white peers, and more Black students with disabilities are suspended and expelled from school than are white or Hispanic students. So the question that I want us to think about and maybe put in the chat is, where's the disconnect? Why are children of color or children of diverse backgrounds? I don't like the term children of color. I just think that we should highlight ethnicity. But why are children of color experiencing a significantly higher level of suspensions and expulsions? So just think about those. Those are some rhetorical questions that I want us to kind of think about as we're going through this. And, just take a moment and just do some introspection. You don't have to, put it in the chat or anything. Just do some introspection about what you think about this. I'm going to see what else we have in the chat. Annoying characteristics, trying to distract others or me, right, the teacher, from learning to avoid learning or talking about math. Yes, that is a very annoying trait as well. And so we're going to talk about some culturally responsive teaching. I appreciate you guys sharing out so far. And so now what I want you to do, if you have your phones, please go to Mentimeter, menti.com, and enter this code 11057723, and then answer the question. So put in multiple responses as it lets you, and then I'm going to show us what it is that we got. So if you have your phone, go ahead and do that and participate in this survey. Put in as many responses as it allows. All right, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that I can share out our results. Let's see if I can go here, if this is the right. I'm looking for the, let me go back actually. Let me stop sharing again. I'm looking for the actual web page for the Mentimeter so I can share our results. So I appreciate your patience as I will pull that up for us. Okay. So now I'm going to reshare my screen. And so here we have our results. I know we have a cozy crowd tonight. So out of the results, it says, how many students do you think are being suspended from school every year? How many students do you think are being suspended from school every year? And these are the results. Too many. I like that answer. 3,000. That says 100,000. A lot. 300. 750,000. 500,000. So how many students do you think are being suspended from school each year? So the smallest number, about 300, and the next one is 500,000. So let's look and see what the data says. I'm going to now look in the chat really quick. Oh, I thought it wanted words. Feel free to put in the chat if you have another response. Feel free to put in another response. So how many students do you think are being suspended every year from school? And so as you're doing that, I'm going to show you what it says. So according to the National Center of Education Statistics, so my thing is I like to pull data from where I know it's vetted and proven and it's legit. This is the National Center of Education Statistics. This is like our hub for educators in the United States. And so it says, according to the NCES's findings in their report titled Number of Students Suspended and Expelled from School, okay, it says by, of course, from public elementary schools, secondary schools, by sex, race, ethnicity, it says there are over 3 million students that are suspended from school every year. Did you hear me? 3 million. 3 million. And on top of that, over 102 students are expelled in grades K-12 each year. Expelled, kicked out, done. We send 100,000 students out. You're done. You came to school. You're done. 100,000 students every year. I don't know how you feel about that. Go ahead and put in the chat. Angie said, I was going to say 1 million, but I thought it was too high. Right. That's 6 times the number of students we have in Iowa. Wow. Yeah, go ahead and continue to put in your chat, your responses. Yeah, more than the population of Iowa. So we're expelling children by the droves. 100,000 students a year. And then my next question is, then what are they doing if they're expelled? What is 100,000 students doing every day? And then Kristen says, how are they expected to learn? And what's the message we are sending them? That we don't want them there. So that sense of belonging, is affected. And it's a sad shame on the nation. And this also aligns with the data that shows that every year we are having 2 million students, at least 1,700,000 to 2 million students are dropping out of school every year. So yeah, April says 3 million is the whole state of Iowa. Yeah, just take the whole state and just expel it. And so when we see these numbers, it's very sobering. I'm going to see if I can pull up the actual sheet for you guys. Can y'all still see my screen? So it shows here now, I'm a dork. I like this kind of stuff. So it shows by state what's going on. So in the first column here, you'll see that out of the numbers suspended and expelled, total number of United States, that's 3,300,000 or 328,750 students total, right? And out of that, out of the males, we're suspending 2,272,290 males. We're suspending 1,056,470 females. And then let's go to your state, Iowa. How many students are being suspended total? So in Iowa, you have a total of 14,190 students that are being suspended in Iowa. And then for males, that's 9,860 males. That's 4,330 females. Okay. And then out of the demographics, you've got that is 10,000 whites, 2,900 Black, 930 Hispanic, 160 Asian Island Pacific students. And then you have American students, American Indian, 140. So this is pretty tough. And then it shows here, if you keep going to the other side of the screen, out of the 102,000 total that were expelled in Iowa, let's go back to Iowa. In Iowa, out of the expulsions, it seems like there's 200 students being expelled, 160 male, 40 students that are female that are being expelled in Iowa. And then, of course, some of the numbers. I can share this file with you guys. I already shared it in the references as well. So thanks for letting me kind of, I guess, navigate through that with you. But I want to say that, you know, when I looked at this, it was very, very troubling to realize that this was definitely a reality. And I knew that there was a sense of urgency that we needed to do something. April said we had 3.193 according to 2021 census. And then Angie says, we are still stuck in trying to have a school system designed for some not to be successful and expect different results. And that has been the sticky conversation is the system working? And if the system is not working, we can't just totally take it down, but we have to provide remedies and support and accommodations and amendments, addendums to the system to help service all students. There should not be a reason why we are kicking out 3 million students or expelling 100,000 students and suspending 3 million students in our nation. We're doing something wrong. Something has to change. So let's keep going. Here, the next slide. Can you guys see this? All right. Let's go to the next slide. So it says, what does research now say? I'm going to X out of that. What does research now say about building relationships? Some tools you're going to need, and I'm going to talk about in this presentation, EDI understanding, okay, culturally responsive teaching, cross-cultural communication, interhumanism, and empathy, okay? So let's break this down because I want everybody to be clear of these things whenever, you know, you're hearing these things and you need to understand that, you know, you're doing best practices and you're not harming anyone. So first off, embracing the concepts of equity, diversity, and inclusion. So equity, according to the NCTM, is when educators provide resources and accommodations as needed to promote access and attainment for all learners. Okay, that doesn't mean it's only racially charged. Equity could be, you know, you're servicing students with disabilities, students of various genders, students of various religious backgrounds, students of various cultures, languages, races. It is multi-tiered. So we have to respect equity in all those different facets. And then diversity is the fact that many different types of things or people are included in something, included in an activity, included in, you know, an idea that you're trying to launch. And then inclusion is the act of intentionally including someone in a group. So whether it's an activity, same experiences, people with disadvantages. Like I know some districts down in Florida, like they have Special Olympics where they intentionally include students with disabilities in Olympic activities for the school, and then they highlight those students and they celebrate them. They do like relay runs and all this stuff. It's really a neat deal that they do. So that's inclusion. And then culturally responsive teaching. What is that? We hear it all the time. Culturally responsive teaching is a term coined by Dr. Geneva Gay. She talks about it in her book, and she says that it's a pedagogy that recognizes the importance of including students' cultural references in all aspects of learning. So again, you're including a student's cultural reference and the aspect of learning. Now, this does not mean that if I have a student that is, for instance, Jamaican, that I'm going to look up everything about Usain Bolt. I'm going to look up everything about Jamaican culture. I'm going to learn patois. I'm going to dress in the Jamaican gear. That's not what that means. It does mean that I'll respect that, and it does mean I'll highlight that from time to time, and that if it's relevant and if it also can be aligned to my learning, then I'm going to take advantage of that. If I'm going to talk about distance, for instance, distance from point A to point B, I can say, hey, Usain Bolt is the fastest runner in the world. He ran this type of distance in this amount of time. What's his rate? You know, I mean, those are different things that you can do, right, to highlight culture within a learning, and that's culture responsive teaching. You're doing it in a way that's, celebrating it, and it uplifts their culture. Does that make sense? And so I want you to take a moment and just think about ways that you've already done this, or ways that you were, I had a lesson coming up and I was thinking about doing something like that. And as you're thinking about that, I'll continue here. It says traditional teaching strategies emphasize the teacher-student dynamic. The student is the teacher is the expert and adheres strictly to the curriculum that supports standardized tests while the student receives knowledge. That is traditional teaching, which we respect. But what has happened is our kids have zoned out because they feel like there's not relevance. There has been a disconnect, right? And we have experienced this. And this is why we're like, okay, why is it that I start the class day, I tell the kids, okay, guys, the problem's on the board. We're going to talk about fractions, for instance, and the students are doing what? Throwing pencils up, talking about Drake, talking about Rihanna, talking about Usain, talking about everything else, talking about what happened in the Super Bowl, and they don't give a flip about my lesson. What do I need to do? But if you started the lesson and on the board it says LeBron James scored such and such, watch and see. Rihanna was singing at this many decibels, whatever. Yeah, you watch and see how their lesson's how it's gonna go. I can promise you, those students are going to be way more engaged than if the cultural aspects are not included in the lesson. Does that make sense? So with that said, we're going to talk about what this looks like and what it should feel like. So keys for implementing culturally responsive teaching. First, we want to activate students' prior knowledge, find out what's going on in their head. What do they know? What do they retain? Where are their gaps? So that if I'm teaching, it's not skating over their head. It's like always a horrible feeling, right? Making learning contextual. And then, of course, encouraging students to leverage their cultural capital. So talk about your culture. Explain to us what that means. If we misunderstood, for instance, I was in Hawaii, right? And before I realized the word Hawaii was actually pronounced Hawaii, I was a Hawaiian out, right? I'm Hawaii, Hawaii, Hawaii. And they're like, it's Hawaii. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah. And then they're like, oh, you think aloha means hello. And they're like, no, ma'am. Aloha means love. Aloha is a state of being that you're aspiring to become. You're aspiring to love all. So we say, we greet you aloha, but we also want you to take that same idea and take it into every aspect of your life. And this is something culturally responsive teaching. That was a lesson that I learned. And now I forever respect, right? Those Hawaiians over there and what they're doing and the beautiful aspect of the word aloha, which I never knew, and so it's like, just like that, there are things about our culture that students that are coming into our culture for the first time, they don't know, or other cultures within America already, that if we just take a moment to just get a little quiet and listen, we will be amazed how much richness will come out of learning from another culture. So yeah. Yeah. So I know Hawaii is, I'm so sorry. Hawaii is not relevant with the weather. You guys are gonna, I'll mail a blanket from Hawaii for you guys. Okay. All love, all love. But okay. So, but you know what I'm trying to say here. Now, the thing is, we have to be culture responsive. And another thing we can do to help us with this is we can reconsider our classroom setup. So I'm going to help you out with an example of something I did when I was effectively in the trenches doing this at a Title I school. And I remember I used to hang up flags of every student's culture. Now, I did not have a physical flag, but I would print colored copies, okay, respectful looking colored copies. I would laminate them, and then I would take them and put them on like neon colored construction paper, kind of like, and then I would laminate the whole thing. And then I would take the hot glue gun and I would hot glue the posters all at the top of the wall, like of the not like the ceiling, but like the border of the wall, all the way across like my classroom. So all four walls had flags of different countries. And so the students, and I was very intentional as to like if I knew I had students from Puerto Rico, Guatemala, from India, from wherever. And I made sure they saw their flag and that it was in a respectful place in the classroom. And those kids would come in, oh my word, time after time. Whoa, miss, that's my country. And it was such a relief to them. It was such a joy. And that feeling, that was worth everything because they were included. Does that make sense? So um Angie said, my students made flags from their countries and we hung them around the room as a border. Awesome. They loved it. Exactly. So I appreciate that confirmation. So, that's just a really neat way to do it. And then of course, if there's like something that they're celebrating in the culture, see if you can give a shout out, during a classroom example or something, making sure that you're doing it in a way that celebrates them and it's not in any way dehumanizing. I know that's not our intention. Sometimes we can accidentally get into a pickle. So just make sure you do your research, making sure that you understand how to relay it in a way that's respectful. And so when you're doing all these things, it builds relationships with your students like never before. And so another good place that you can use cultural responsive teaching, free nugget during Pi Day. So if you ever celebrate Pi Day, March 14th, and you allow students to bring in like a circular object and measure pi, you can have them bring in circular dishes from their culture. And then you can have them measure the circumference and the diameter or and then find out what pi is. You could do like all these different things to celebrate. So it doesn't always have to be just a circle. Say, bring in a pie, you can bring in an American pie, or you can bring in a dish that your parents, your culture puts in a circular dish. It doesn't have to be a sweet. It could be a cultural dish. I had students bring in bean dip, students bring in pies, students bring in all kinds of things. I had a student bring in, a box of chicken or like all different kinds of things to celebrate their culture. And it was awesome. Of course, I talked to administration, let them know, hey, this is what we're doing. And then I also had other like English teachers and stuff would cross reference. Like, so they would be teaching about, Pythagoras and things like that. And then we would talk about, Pythagoras and all the mathematicians and things like that. And then we would get together, Archimedes, whoever, and then we would celebrate together. So it's just an idea. We had a rubric to make sure it was equitable, fair. It was really fun. And so that's just an idea I want to share with you guys. Now, let's keep going. Cross-cultural communication. This is one of my favorite terms since I have been in this work because it's just global. It just makes sense. Cross-cultural communication, it's seen as intercultural communication. It is the study of how verbal and nonverbal communication takes place among individuals from different backgrounds, geographies, and cultures. So for instance, I'm African American, and one of the things that we do in African American culture that is just understood among African Americans, I don't know why we do it, but we do it. If I see a African American man coming across the street and he makes eye contact with me, I nod and he nods. It's respect. We don't even have to exchange words. It's cross-cultural communication. It's respect. So when I'm also in various cultures, Asian cultures, I might nod or bow. If I'm in, I had the opportunity to train hundreds of Indian beauty pageants in my former life, and so when I was training these women, before you did anything, they would say namaste, and you had to say namaste, and they would namaste, and it was a sign of respect. You couldn't just, hey, what's up, y'all? Like, you had to understand namaste was the way they, respected each other. It was their hello, it was their greeting, it was their goodbye, it was respect. And I had to come and align myself in that cultural element. And so that's what cross-cultural communication does, is it makes us slow down enough to say, well, what is it, what is respect to you? What does hello mean to you? What does when I was trying to learn how to do the salsa and the merengue, when I was a principal at a school predominantly Hispanic, which I absolutely loved, I remember like just really listening and asking questions like, so so how do the women do that? So what? I have to go off the man's following and like, and they were teaching me some stuff. That's cross cultural communication. And so it's verbal and nonverbal. It's what does it look like? So what is the body language saying? What is the facial context saying? What does all that mean? When we look at excuse me, officers that have served and they're saluting, we know what time it is, right? So these are all different examples of cross-cultural communication. And here it says that it's among individuals from different backgrounds, geographies, and cultures. The powerful part about this, though, is that you have to remove your element of comfort to step into their shoes and understand what respect means for them. And so it might be completely different from what you're used to. But that's why, like, even when we ask students, hey, look at me when I'm talking to you, that might not be respectful in their culture, especially if they're coming from, maybe an Asian culture or things like that. We might have to think twice before we say, why aren't you looking at me? Didn't you hear me? Look at me, instead of it, just take a moment and say, can you hear me? Okay, I would like for you to respect me, but I have a question. It's respect in your culture. Is it just you writing to me? Is it you responding? Let me know, because I want to make sure I'm respecting you as we're having this conversation. So you slow down enough to make sure that you're respecting, everyone. I'm going to now look in the, yes. So Amanda said, we have a morning meeting every morning, or every day. In a while, after a while, students become more and more comfortable sharing beyond the typical yesterday I played video games. And so she said, my birthday party is this weekend. Oh, happy birthday. We're having a bunch of family over and my mom is making a such and such dish. It was a Spanish dish. Beautiful. That's exactly like understanding and taking yourself in their shoes and allowing them. In Iowa, we wave to everyone. Okay, April. It was so strange to me when I moved here. Right. That's neat. Okay, and so with that said, let's continue. So here we're going to talk now about how does cross-cultural communication enhance math discourse? Well, for one, it helps you to connect with cultures and it helps to make room for discussion. It helps everyone to emphasize culturally with each other. This right here is powerful. I remember I had an example of a student. The student was, I believe, Asian, and the student had just come to us from from overseas. And we were doing, I think it was like Algebra 2 pre-calc, and I had the student to solve some problems. Well, the way they did the math was weird, but it was right. Does that make sense? Like, I was like, whoa, like the way they wrote it, the way they structured it was completely like I had never seen it before, but they knew exactly what they were doing. And I had to respect, like, that's your world, and that's how you were able to kind of encompass all this and understand this. And I'm going to get on your bandwagon and help support you, help you keep going forward. I just thought that was really neat. And that's what, when you're making room for everyone and you're making room for discussion and you're enforcing active listening, you're speaking slowly, understanding that not all students, have English as a first language. And sometimes we are speaking a million words a minute. We don't even realize it. And I want you to try something next time you're out and about. If you have the opportunity and you're among, say you're going to a Mexican restaurant and you're sitting down and you're listening, take a moment and try to listen. Just listen to a conversation in Spanish and see how you would feel if you had to listen to a conversation of someone teaching you in Spanish, for instance, if Spanish is not your first language, and you had to listen to that for an hour, and there's no interpretation. There's nothing. Like, you have to just grasp it and get it. Well, that's how our students with second language, English as second language learners, that's how they feel. They're like, are you serious? Like, I have to translate all this, take a test in a different language. And it's very overwhelming. And they are geniuses, but it's like so much pressure for them to do all of that work. So I try to empathize. I try to put myself in their shoes. And I think that's what all of us try to do. Slow down enough to put ourselves in their shoes and realize, wait, I might be talking at my normal speed, but for them, right, it might be me talking at a million miles an hour. So you might have to take the time and say, hey, do you understand what I'm saying? Do you need me to repeat anything? Do you need me to write anything down? Or you need me to get, a glossary, anything for you to understand? It's just making sure that you're following up with those students so that you're not leaving them behind. So yeah. So, all right. So now listen, we're going to continue going. It talks about empowering voices so that everybody's voice is heard. This is imperative. Also, making sure people are uplifted and elevated, and making sure that we're not degrading or dehumanizing. That is so key. I think it's just a sad situation to be put in. If you're an educator, you were certified to teach, you went through school, you vowed that you would do your best to help all learners, and then you're putting them in a situation where they're feeling like they're being degraded or dehumanized. That is not why we signed up for education. And so we have to do what we can to make sure that we're not going to be in that category, because it's just not a good light on you, not a good light on the school district. And it's just not good if you make the news, like some people, like the one lady in, I think she was in California or wherever, and she like mocked Native Americans, and it was a hot mess. And now she's, out of a job. So with that said, let's keep going. Embracing interhumanism. I love interhumanism. It is the interaction occurring between human beings. I promise y'all, if you just take a moment and learn about cross-cultural communication and interhumanism, it will change your life. It will, for the better. And so interhumanism actually came from Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And they found him and his research buddies here, Rogers and this other guy, Bugenthal, I think. It says it's a system of thought that focuses on human beings and states that humans are inherently good, and that when their basic needs are made available to them. So listen to that. If they have their basic needs, they're going to be inherently good. And then he says students will make good decisions when all their needs are met. Learners will bring out the best in themselves, and that humans are driven by feelings more than rewards and punishments. And I'm going to get on this and get off of this. There's a woman that just unfortunately took her life. She was a professor in Missouri, and she said she didn't feel like she had the support. And you're thinking, wait, this woman has a doctorate. This woman is amazing. Like, she's accomplished so much, but she didn't feel like she could really make a difference, I guess. She got overwhelmed and she took her life. And that's a very sensitive situation. But I want to point this out, because this right here, it says, when they feel that that humans are driven by feelings more than rewards and punishments. We have to make sure we're guarding the way all students feel, that there's a sense of belonging, so that students, their mental health is protected, that their emotions are protected, and that they know that they can trust us, and that we are truly going to be there to advocate for them in all situations. Okay, so that's interhumanism. Yeah, so suspending students isn't helping anyone. And believe me, it's so easy to suspend a student, right? And for anything, for attitude, not prepared, coming to class late. Like we could, of course. But when you do a double take and say, wait, I didn't sign up to have you suspended. I signed up to get you proficient. So what do I need to do on my end to have more tolerance, so that when a student is getting under my nerves or on my nerves, I'm not taking it out on them? I can't tell you how many times when I was dealing with the students in my particular situation, especially at the turnaround school and the Title I school with the seniors and juniors, there were so many times these kids were cursing me out, like full-blown curse words, calling me curse words in my face, that I would have to literally just stop, bite my tongue. Sometimes I would have to literally turn my body towards the board and just start writing math, so that I would de-escalate, so that I wouldn't suspend everybody in the class. Does that make sense? Because sometimes students will push your trigger. They'll do that. But it's like, how do you de-escalate to keep everybody in? And I had to learn that. And it took years to learn that discipline, that emotional discipline, that yes, even though I'm a teacher, I am still human, and I have to check my emotional regimen. I have to check myself to make sure that I'm not going to just snap out and let all these kids gonna get on my nerves and suspend everybody. So when we realize that these kids, they're gonna like the way they feel in our class more than anything else, we have to do what we can to guard their feelings and make them feel like they matter. So now we're going to talk about the power of interhumanism in the classroom, because it helps to create healthy class discussion and collaboration. So Equity in Action, it's a part of the Math and Use book series that I was able to craft with Big Ideas Learning. It strives to connect humans with other humans despite their backgrounds, and it helps learners to alleviate all their fears during their learning experience. And so you consider any biases, you conquer them. You're intentional about socially connecting with other learners. And of course, you see all humans as equal and valuable. That's important. And so it breaks the ice, and it basically it helps you with group work, collaboration. It strengthens that mathematical discourse, and it connects humans through social interactions. That's key. If the student doesn't feel like they're involved socially, we have to be intentional at making sure that we're connecting all learners, make sure they all feel. And Angie says here, the struggle is real. It took me a while to understand how to de-escalate. Yes, it is hard. Kids are brutal sometimes. Yes, they are. But remember, they're trusting in us to get them through. So just think about this. How have you been able to break the ice in your classroom with interhumanism and getting students socially connected, especially students of various backgrounds? Just think about it. How have you been able to do that, and what can you take from that as you continue to move forward and do the same, moving forward? Now, components of interhumanism: it enhances social emotional skills. It increases the sense of belonging and value, strengthens their dialogue during mathematical discourse. I love this because you'll see that when students really start feeling accepted, it's like they come off mute and then they start like, oh, but I think this, and sometimes they're good and sometimes they miss it. But the fact that their voice is heard is like, yes, it's like celebration. And that's what we're after. And then, of course, it motivates your learners to do their best. So this is now how interhumanism, it increases student engagement and grit. So it's going to increase their motivation through mathematical discourse, as we talked about. It's going to cultivate grit, which of course is the passion, perseverance to obtain long-term goals by Dr. Duckworth. It also enhances student voice as students share out there and they take their turns and they have the practical socio-emotional learning skills. And it improves respect for everyone. Sometimes you're like, oh, that kid's so disrespectful. Well, have they had an opportunity to have dialogue and discourse? Maybe they don't know. Maybe your classroom is the place for them to learn. Maybe it's the place for them to know, okay, this is not how you talk. This is how you talk. And this is, a modeled example as to how you respect each other. Because sometimes we assume that these kids are, all kids are coming to us with all this stuff lined up. No, sometimes we have to be the teacher, even in their social interaction. So now, the results of doing this effectively, you're going to have scholars that are going to soar beyond grit and opportunity. They're going to increase in their grades, academic performance. You're going to have increases, I promise you, in graduation and in social adaptation. You will see these improvements. I promise you will. And tips, though, that I wanted to leave you guys with. Tips for building relationships with all students. First off, understand and remember, this should be like a blueprint, like something like permanently like tattooed in our minds. Students don't care about how much we know until they know about how much we care. So we have to convince students that they belong. We have to convince students that we are their advocate. We have to celebrate cultural and diverse aspects of each learning or of each student. We have to include their cultural relevance into our curriculum. We have to learn to be an active listener for all students, eliminate any biases, and then aim to liberate each child from visible and every invisible barrier that may exist. And that's tough, but we can aim. It's a work in progress. So don't be too hard on yourself on some of these. And listen, we all have biases because we're human. I have a bias. I have a bias towards mango smoothies versus strawberry smoothies. I want mango. I'm sorry, I have a bias towards pineapple versus banana. It's a bias. It doesn't make me a bad person. It's just a bias. But do we have biases that are pertaining to certain students that we have to kind of reel back in and say, wait, hold up, this is affecting how I'm teaching. This is affecting how they're learning. And if we do have those biases, then we need to do some introspection and work out a plan. I know Harvard has the implicit bias test that you can go on and take by yourself. You don't have to tweet out your responses. No, you can just take the test and then do some introspection and figure out how you can improve in the various areas. I've done it myself. I've taken it a couple times, and I continue to make sure that I'm where I need to be and that I can, adjust to the biases and make it to where I can be a better human being, just as a result of implementing what they're telling me to do in those tests. So through equity in action, the math and you, there's cross-cultural communication. We stick together. But I want to highlight different ways that I found as an author that was key that we needed to connect with students. For one, we need to highlight ways to bring culture into learning. that's relevant, and it helps to connect the student to math. So if you can learn to say, okay, what would this type of student be interested in? How can I now weave that into my curriculum? That is a key component. And then, of course, cultivating an environment for healthy cross-cultural communication. Do you have norms? Do you have procedures? How do students communicate with each other? Do you have various things they can do in group work? Do you have roles that you've assigned to students? Do you have projects? Do you have project-based learning? Also, you can provide actionable tips to promote equitable math practices while keeping the whole child in mind, because we do care about the whole child. So seeing what can we do to promote those equitable math practices, speaking to all the needs of the students, not just racially charged, all the needs. Do they have a disability? Do they have a language situation? Do they have a religion coming, like a religious event coming up? Do they have an emotional handicap? Do they have a mental illness that they're battling? What do they have going on? And how can I help support them? And then, of course, motivating every educator to take a risk at trusting your students. That's a big one, so that your students will ultimately trust you. Because sometimes students, they will not trust you, and it's not your fault. And we don't have to take it personal. Students, sometimes they have been jaded by just their life experience with math when they were like first grade. And then they come to us and they're like jaded by the time they come to 8th grade. So we have to realize that, we've got to learn to build that trust. And I tell you, it's through relationship building, it's through cultural responsive teaching, it's through understanding their culture, cross-cultural communication. That's what's really going to help us all stay connected. And so, in conclusion, we are all better together. So through the process of relationship building, we can remember the pain that we've all been through, but we can embrace a hope for a better future. We can connect with the whole child as we motivate each learner. Through cross-cultural communication and interhumanism, we can have an openness to help us to develop with our students, so that we can trust them and that trust can be established. And then, of course, through different curriculums, equity in action and whatnot, you can take actionable steps to help our students to fly into academic achievement as we help to bridge the gap. So, do we have any questions before I turn this over? I want to show you a opportunity where you can give back. This is if you wanted, I have a book called Equity Counts, which I've talked about before. And this is just a simple QR code where you can find a discount link if you want that. And then I have another one in a little bit that I'm going to go to where you guys can kind of give me some feedback. You can give me feedback on this, and then we can go from there. So now I'm going to show you my next, where I would love your feedback from this survey response. You could scan this. And now I will take your questions. Thank you so much. Any questions